Hi, you guys. This is Ms. Schwenk, and I am using closed captioning. So it'll be interesting to see how it all works out and see what it captures. And I promise you, it will make some mistakes, just like I will make some mistakes. But this is great practice for you to read aloud with me because you can see what I'm saying across the top of the screen. So, today we're going to talk about poetry. And I know you heard Mrs. Miller yesterday with a poetry lesson. And so today I'm going to read you some poems and we're going to think about why the poet, just like the author, why the poet wrote the poem. Because there's more than one reason why someone would write a poem. So, yesterday's lesson was talking about how in poetry there's usually rhyme. Not always, but pretty often. And it doesn't have to be every single line that rhymes. And when I read to you, you'll kind of see that too. So, anyhow, rhyme is kind of a big part of poetry. And there's also repeating. So, often what makes a poem different than a story or any other kind of writing is they'll repeat things, whether it is a rhyme or it's the same word, however it goes, it's almost like a song, it will repeat itself. So, repeat. And the other part of a poem that Mrs. Miller mentioned was movement. So, you can almost see it, feel it, hear it, the movement of the subject of the poem. So, movement. I'll move it down here. Movement. But most importantly, in today's poetry lesson, we're going to talk about purpose, which is asking why. Why did the poet write the poem in the first place? Because you might write the poem because it's your assignment. But the poets, the authors who wrote these books, it wasn't their assignment. So they had a reason why they wrote the poetry. So I'm going to read to you and you're going to think about it. And you'll have an activity where you tell me why you think they wrote it. And then we'll get on to today's poems in our writing activity. So this is just to get your brain thinking about the poetry I'm about to read to you. So here we go. The book I'm reading is called Spectacular Science, a book of poems. And if someone told me the topic or the title of the book was Spectacular Science, I would not think poetry. But yet, it is a poetry book. So here we go. I tagged some of the ones I like the best. But you might not choose the same ones, but I am reading, so I got to pick. So the first poem is called What is Science? And What is Science by Rebecca Kai Doutledge. What is science? So many things. A study of stars, Saturn's rings, the study of rocks, geodes and stones, dinosaur fossils, old chipped bones, the study of soil, oil and gas, of sea and sky, of seed and grass, of wind and hurricanes that blow, volcanoes, tornadoes, earthquakes, snow. What is science? The study of trees, of butterflies and killer bees, glaciers, geysers, clay and sand, mighty mountains, the rolling land, the power of trains, planes that soar. Science is this and so much more. So into the earth and into the sky, we question the how, the where, when, and why. You have to think about why the author chose to write that. And there's a lot of rhyming, and it was fun to read, but maybe there's a whole nother reason why the author wrote it. And also in a poetry book, sometimes all the poems are by the same poet, author, writer, but in this book, there's all different poets. So sometimes you'll see that. Encounter by Lillian Moore. We both stood heart-stopping still, I in the doorway, the deer near the old apple tree. He muscle-weary, straining to hear I holding breath to say, do not fear. In the silence between us, my thought said, stay. Did it snap like a twig? He rose on a curve and fled. And I would guess they'd say, away. But I don't see that. If I was a poet, I would have added, away. I'm going to read you a couple more. The Seed by Eileen Fisher. How does it know, this little seed, if it is to grow to a flower or weed? If it is to be a vine or shoot, or grow to a tree with a deep, long, deep root? A seed is so small. Where do you suppose it stores up all of the things it knows? Does make you think, gotta say. It's a little about science and a little about art, a little about writing. Magnet. This one is really interesting to me. Magnet by Valerie Worth. This small flat horseshoe is sold for a toy. See, they made it look like the moon, but you get those magnets that have that shape just like that. I'm going to start over. This small flat horseshoe is sold for a toy. We are told that it will pick up pins, and it does later. Oh gosh, time after time. Later, it lies about, getting its red paint chipped, being offered pins less often, until at last we leave it alone. Then it leads its own life, trading secrets with the North Pole, reading invisible messages from the sun. So that one hardly had rhyming in it. And they're comparing a magnet to the North Pole and the sun. So you can think about that. This is my last poem, Dinosaur Bone. And I'll say, I love the pictures in this book, and that can be a big part of poetry, is what goes along with it. But Dinosaur Bone by Alice Schertle. Dinosaur bone, alone, alone, keeping a secret, old as stone. Deep in the mud, asleep in the mud, tell me, dinosaur bone. What was the world when the seas were new, and ferns unfurled, and strange winds blew? Were the mountains fire? Were the rivers ice? Was it mud and mire? Was it paradise? How did it smell, your earth, your sky? How did you live? How did you die? How long have you lain alone, alone? Tell me, dinosaur bone. Alrighty. So this whole book, I'd have to recommend. Spectacular Science, book of poems. And I hope you enjoyed it. And there'll be an activity attached where you can think about the reason for these poems. Bye.